Chatterbots? Welcome to Season 4 of Chat About That. I'm your host, Bella.
And I'm Malik.
And in this episode, we're going to be chatting about Physical 100. Before we chat about Physical 100, we should probably address the elephant in the room. So I was thinking there was something that was missing with Chat About That, and I figured it out. And it's a co-host, so thank you so much, Malik, for joining me. So moving forward, Malik and I will be hosting Chat About That together, and I'm so excited to have you, so thank you so much.
Yeah, excited to be here.
And you might remember him from way back when I did an Urban Legends episode. He talked a little bit about, I think it was a Maryland urban legend. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, the Goat Man.
The Goat Man, yes. He was chatting about the Goat Man with me, so I just wanted to invite you on the podcast, and we're really excited to chat about Physical 100. So Physical 100 premiered in January, and I remember I was just browsing on Netflix. We were looking for like a movie to watch that night, and I saw like on the homepage was like top in Netflix or whatever, and it was Physical 100. I'm like, what is this show? So I started playing it, and you weren't in the room yet, but I started playing it, and I was like, this is like a real life Squid Game. Obviously people aren't dying, but I just like got really into it, and I was like halfway through the episode, and you came downstairs and you were like, what are you watching? And I was like, this is this crazy Korean, like, game show, reality competition, like American Ninja Warrior kind of show. And we got hooked on it, like, right away. And I really just wanted to chat about this because it's not something I normally would watch. Like, I don't know if that was, like, a kind of show you would normally watch.
Probably not. Just the way it was marketed, you know. Kind of like sports and things like that, not really interested in. So if it has kind of that angle, I'd be like, skip. But
yeah, but it was like number one on Netflix, and I'm like, okay, it's probably good if like a million or so people are like watching it. And so I started watching it, and it was just immediately like, really interesting. So that's why I wanted to chat about it today. So the show takes 100, it's what's called Physical 100, but they're 100 of Korea's like most physically fit people. So we're talking like Olympic athletes and like wrestlers and like MMA fighters and like all kinds of people are basically competing to see who has like the most physically fit like body, and we'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, like not something we normally would watch, but it was just like very interesting. And a lot of the people on the show are really well known in Korea, so it's kind of like if we did this show in America, if like The Rock or like John Cena or like those kinds of people were on it. Yeah, like crazy physically fit people, and I just found it like really fascinating. So the first episode, they basically just introduce all the contestants, so it's like the majority of the episode just introducing them, and I like almost skipped it, but I was like, no, this is probably gonna be important. But there's literally 100 of them, and they don't actually talk about like every single person. They kind of more focus on like the celebrities.
The well-known folks.
Yeah, like the people who are like well-known, which we'll get into because there was one guy who we were like all obsessed with, and we were like obsessed with him.
Yeah.
So we'll get into him in a minute. So we're not going to list like every single person, but there's a few standouts. So the most well-known people are, and I have the list here, Chu Sang-hoon, who's a former judoka and MMA fighter, and you tell the audience what everyone calls him.
Oh yeah, everyone called him Sexy Yama. At first we thought it was somebody joking around, but here it's apparently kind of a catchphrase of his.
Yeah, so Sexy Yama means sexy mountain.
Sexy mountain.
Sexy mountain.
Yep.
And he was like definitely our favorite contestant.
Oh yeah.
Because not only was he like attractive and like really like good at like everything he was doing, but he was just so humble. Like he just, his attitude was like so adorable. Like he just seemed so sweet. And he was like, I'm gonna use quotes here, one of the older contestants, because like I didn't really think they were like that old, but he was like up in his 40s, like late 40s, and he was like worried that he wouldn't do really well because there's all these like younger athletes and stuff. But spoiler, he makes it until the second to last like round, because there's 5 quests, they call them quests, and he makes it to quest 4. So he's not in the top 5 people, but he was like very close to making it to the top 5 contestants. So like he did really, really well. And then there was a Olympic gold medalist for skeleton, who was really famous, and then a gymnast who won a gold as well. And then there was this contestant named Agent H, who was a Korean Navy SEAL and reservist, and he's also like really popular on YouTube. So there's just a lot of people who came in that the other contestants were immediately like, oh my god, they're here, oh my god, this is crazy. So yeah, so the first episode, basically they're walking into this like giant room, and there's like basically the room in Squid Game where all the beds are. It like kind of looked like that, except there weren't any beds. There are ceramic like busts of all the contestants, so they have to go find their bust and they have to stand next to it. And so that's like when they're like, oh, we see like so and so's here, and the range of just like busts were like really interesting because some of the contestants like obviously like six-pack abs, like giant buff dudes, and then there's some people who were like a little bit like not skinny, but they were toned but didn't have like six-pack abs, and then there were some dudes who were kind of like sumo wrestler bodies. And then I want to talk about this as well, that there's actually a decent amount of female contestants. And they did pretty well.
They did really well.
Yeah, unfortunately, none of the female contestants made it to the top 5 at the end, but there were, I think, 3 that made it into the top, what was it,
the
20?
last challenge, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the last challenge was it 25 or 30?
It was 25, I think.
It was 25, so there were, I think, 3 that made it to top 25. So not, like, great, but for the amount of female contestants there were, I think that was, like, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think they did awesome.
So, yeah, we were rooting for all the women. But yeah, they did pretty well in the challenges. So we're not going to talk about each episode individually because some of them, like the quests span across like multiple episodes. So we're just going to talk about each quest and go from there. So, like I said, there's quests, but before they did the first quest, there was a preliminary challenge.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. And this is kind of when you walked in the room. They had just announced the preliminary challenge when you walked in the room, and you're like, what is going on?
So before the main quest competition began, there was a preliminary quest where they were split into 2 groups of 50 people, and they were asked to hang onto a bar from the ceiling, which at first they couldn't see it and nobody knew what was going on until, this big announcement came across the room and it's like, the quest is about to begin. Then they all looked up and this giant metal structure is lowering towards them, and they started putting it together like, we're going to have to like grab this and hang on. And it stopped, just out of arm's reach. At full extension of your arm.
Yeah, and everyone had to like hold on to it. And the announcer of this it's a giant eyeball.
Yeah.
That's like on a screen, so it's very like it gives Squid Game vibes.
They were really leaning into the Squid Game vibes, at least in the first couple of episodes, and maybe to gain viewership. I think maybe kind of pander to that a little bit.
Yeah, and like some of the contestants even like when they walked into like the first like quests like this, they were like, this is Squid Game, and I'm like, okay, so we're not the only people who think.
Yeah, and even the for lack of better terms, the stagehands and helpers, and those guys, they were running around in like these ninja costumes with hoods up and like full face masks on. So it's like, you guys know what you're doing.
They did kind of look like the Squid Game, like
yeah. Very
the
similar
pink outfits. Yeah,
yeah, they didn't have the shapes.
Yeah, But yeah, the announcer eyeball thing was like
that was intense. Yeah,
that whole concept was very funny. But yeah, so this thing like it's like I don't know, it kind of looks like
a giant, almost like scaffolding.
Scaffolding, yeah, that's the right word. It's like lowers down from the ceiling, and they have to hold on to it. And then they were like, oh, if we fall down, we're gonna like get hurt. No, once it like raises up, the floor, like the panels of the floor, like move out, and there's a swimming pool. So basically, when they fall down, they fall into a swimming pool. Not as interesting as the glass challenge from Squid Game, or the tug of war challenge.
Yeah.
But isn't there a tug of war? Did they do some sort of? No, they did. It was the last quest. There was some like tug of war type thing in the last challenge that reminded me of Squid Game. But basically the preliminary quest is, they're split up into the 2 groups of 50, and whoever lasts the longest, like, wins. And they keep saying, like, the eyeball keeps saying, you'll have an advantage if you do good. So some of the people dropped out, like, very quickly because they wanted to, like, conserve their energy, and some people just, like, some of the guys who were, like, bigger built, they didn't do as well. So the advantage is when everyone was done, the 2 groups, they all come together, and they're basically put in, like, their ranking of how they did. Yeah. So whoever did, like, the best is like number 1, like the time limit. So like if you held on, I can't remember how long. I think it was like 20 minutes or so was the longest, or 30 minutes.
I think it was like 15.
15 or
13
so,
to 15
yeah.
minutes.
So whoever did like who held on the longest was like ranked number 1, and
Mm-hmm.
then number 2, and then so those groups at the end, everyone was split off between 50 and 50. So there was like a pedestal kind of thing.
Top 50, literally.
Literally top 50, like on like a pedestal, ranked from 1 to 50, and then like the lower people were ranked 51 to 100. And then the advantage goes into the actual first quest. The winner, like the first person, is the first person who gets to choose their competitor for the next quest. So the next quest is called a one-on-one death match. It's literally called a death match. But basically there's 2 arenas that they can choose from. There's one that's like more obstacle course, like a jungle gym kind of vibe, and then the other one is like a mud pit.
A mud pit.
Yeah, there's like a mud pit in
For
the middle.
wrestling, basically.
Yeah, for more like wrestlers and stuff. So say Malik won the whole thing. He was number 1. He gets to choose first who he wants to compete with. So a lot of people, and going into this challenge, they actually knew what they were doing, because some of the later challenges, the eyeball does not tell them what they're doing before they have to pick their teams, which is
A whole other can of worms.
whole other can of worms, because like you don't know, like, do we want people who are like fast? Do we want people who are strong? But for this, they knew that it would be one-on-one. So a lot of the people were very smart, and they picked people like in the same weight class as them.
That's what some of them tried to do. Yeah, the ones who were smart did that.
Yeah, so some of the women who were, wrestlers, they obviously picked the wrestling arena, and they picked other wrestlers who were in similar weight classes or people they thought that they could beat. And some of the people just picked, like, people that they, like, wanted to fight against. So this one guy who's Sexy Yama's partner. So Sexy Yama was like, in, the 50s. So he wasn't in the top 50 for that, but he was, like, in the first row of, like, the bottom one. So I would say he was, like, 51 to 60 probably, like, in the numbers. So he did, like, not terribly in that challenge. Just really shy of making it to the 50. And someone who picked him was, like, a younger guy who was in the top 50. A younger guy, similar build to him, and they do the jungle gym. But, okay, so we haven't explained exactly what the death match is. So basically they go into these 2 arenas, they can pick which one, and whoever, like, holds onto this, like, ball, it's kind of like a dodgeball kind of ball.
Yeah.
It's like a soft dodgeball ball, so whoever is in possession of that ball by the end of 3 minutes, they get like 3 minutes to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they get like 3 minutes. Whoever is in possession of it wins and goes on. So this quest eliminates half of the contestants. And Sexyama, he wins very closely, though.
A lot of them were really close.
Yeah, a lot of them were pretty close.
Down to the last few seconds in some cases.
And then some of them even had to go into like an overtime where you had a minute.
Yeah.
I think it was like a minute or a minute and a half or something.
Yeah.
So, but they were all pretty evenly matched. And some of the rounds in this were like really interesting because it was like more of like a skinnier dude up against like a guy who was like more hefty, and the skinnier guy ended up winning in that case.
Yeah, he ended up picking the guy up and extracting the ball, and everyone's like, "How'd he do that?"
Yeah, and
it was
then,
really impressive.
And then some of the people, like, it was so neck and neck.
Down to the last seconds where it was whoever can make a break for it and just touch the ball first wins.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So this quest lasted like
couple episodes.
Yeah, so it was like the first couple people were in the second episode because they aired these episodes 2 at a time. There's 9 episodes. They aired 2 at a time, and then the finale was the last one. Episode 9 was the last one. So then, like, the last, like, maybe 20 minutes of episode 1, and then the whole episode 2, and then, like, the second, like, first half of episode 3. So this lasted a long time, and I do think it was interesting, but it wasn't as interesting to watch as the later contests.
It got repetitive after a while. I mean, they had so many people to go through.
Yeah, and it makes sense why they would stretch this out like 3 episodes. I guess when it comes down to it, it was really like 2 episodes worth of content. So it makes sense because there were more people. Obviously, it's the first one. But yeah, I think it got a little bit repetitive. Although the round with Sexyama, I think, was the most interesting because they're both MMA. They're MMA.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So they do MMA. The guy who picked Sexyama to we're just going to keep calling him that.
Yeah.
Everybody calls him that. So the contestant who picked Sexyama to go up against was also an MMA fighter, younger guy. And they decided to not do, like, the ball challenge, they decided to just do MMA rules.
Yep.
Which was really, really cool because they were really just doing an MMA fight.
Yeah, and basically they decided who would win that would then go get the ball and win the challenge.
Yeah, so it was really interesting, and they were very close.
Yeah.
It was a really close. So I think that one was the most interesting, and then there was one challenge, I think it was with Agent H in the mud pit. That one was really close too.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was really good. But yeah, I think it got a little repetitive, but obviously there's a lot of contestants and everything. Okay, so then when all of these contestants, when they win or lose, this is where those ceramic busts from the beginning come in. So when a contestant is eliminated, they have to take a sledgehammer and smash their bust, basically symbolizing that their body is not worthy or was not good enough.
Squid Game death.
Yeah, the Squid Game style death. But that's where those busts come into play, and then there's a challenge later with the busts as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of symbolically showing that their body wasn't strong enough.
Yeah, they were physically broken in the challenge.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good insight. So before Quest 2, the remaining 50 contestants get to select top 3 contestants that they would like to be in a team together with for the next quest. And they're not actually told what this quest is going to be or what it's going to entail, what skill sets you need or anything. So they're really just blindly picking people. And so there's going to be 10 groups of 5. And so each contestant picks one person, or I guess they vote on who they want to be team leaders. And whoever has the most votes is the number 1 team leader down to number 10 team leader. And then whoever isn't picked as a team leader, those people select which team leader they want to be on their team. It's kind of confusing, but basically 1 through 10 team leaders ranked from the number of votes, and then each extra person who isn't a team leader picks who they want. But the teams can only have 5 total contestants.
Yep.
And so if, say, Malik was number 1 team leader and 8 people lined up for him, he has to pick 4 of those people. So then as it starts going down, people become they're calling them rejects.
Yeah.
So the number 1 team is the quote unquote strongest team, and then the last team is made up of a couple people that wanted to be on that team leader's team, and then just quote unquote rejects. I don't think they're rejects. We're just using that term because that's how they call them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the top 1 through 5 teams, they're we're the strongest, we're the best, yeah. And then other people are we're just full of nobody wanted us.
They're all thin and weak and not ripped. It's
doesn't mean you're not.
But they're still in the top 50 out of the top 100 people, so still very strong and athletic.
Yeah, I mean, still impressive. And so at this point, they still have no idea what this quest is going to be. And so there's going to be 5 rounds with 2 teams going up against each other. And so 5 of those teams will make it onto quest number 3. And so they don't know what this challenge is going to be until they walk into the room. So basically, the rules of quest number 2, which this was one of my favorite challenges.
This one was cool. Yeah.
I think quest 3 was the best.
Yeah.
Quest 3 was my favorite, but
there was a lot of moving parts.
Yes, but this quest was also really, really fun to watch. I think this was the most fun to watch because there's just a lot of stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
In quest 3, quest 2 and 3 were the most fun to watch. So basically each team has to complete this bridge. So there's it's kind of hard to explain, but there's a bridge that's suspended over a net. So if they fell down, they'd fall into a net. And there's wooden panels that they have to put together to build this bridge. And one person or a couple people will make this bridge, and then it goes across to another area that they have to dump sand into this cylinder, and whatever team fills the cylinder up more wins. So at the bottom of where they make the bridge, this is really, it's kind of complicated to explain, but basically at the bottom section of this bridge is a long staircase. There's a sand pit where they have to fill up these bags.
Yep.
And they're not allowed to pass the sandbags to each other. So if Malik picks up a bag of sand and I'm already at the top of the stairs, he can't pass the bag to me once you hold the bag of sand, you have to
So
travel.
they couldn't make an assembly line going up the stairs. So every person with a bag of sand had to run it all the way up the stairs, all the way across this bridge, dump it, all the way back.
Yeah, and if they didn't construct the bridge well enough, because basically it's like a rope bridge that they put these pieces of planks, and if they didn't secure the planks well enough, because there's like Velcro under there where you can like secure them onto the rope. If they didn't secure the bridge well enough, the pieces are like flying everywhere. So there's one group that doesn't construct it really well, and half of the pieces like fly off.
Yeah.
And so if they take a long time to do the bridge, they can't cross, and then if they take too long to fill up the sandbags and stuff. So one of the first teams to go was, I think it was the number 2 team and the last team.
Yeah.
And so the last team is like the reject team. The team captain was a woman. They had like 3 or 4 women on. Yeah. I think they had 3 women, like smaller builds versus a group of like guys. I think that group had maybe had 1 woman in it, or maybe not. I'm not sure, but it was mostly men, like big buff dudes. And the reject team wins.
Yeah.
So it's really not that challenge, I think, was more about like teamwork and like focusing. And that challenge was interesting because the leader, she stayed on the bottom with the sand and was like digging out the sand the whole time to kind of make it looser. So that way when the people came back with bags, because there wasn't a whole lot of bags. I think there were like 6 bags. And one of them was like larger. So she was like really loosening up the sand the whole time. So when the people came down, she could easily just like scoot it into the bags, which was really good. And then they ended up winning, I think, because at the end there was like a minute left and she filled up a bag and like ran as fast as she could. And it was like really close. So I think if she didn't go at the end, I don't think their team would have won.
Probably not.
Yeah. So it was really interesting. So that was the gist of that. Yeah, 5 teams ended up being eliminated. I just thought it was just an interesting challenge. Like,
I think it definitely took strategy, like you said, having somebody at the sand, doing something, even like a little thing like digging up the sand to make it looser, to make it quicker to fill the bags, to the point where taking your time actually putting the bridge together correctly, to the point where then they had to maintain control moving across the bridge, because some of the teams, remember, the more macho men, they just ran across this bridge like crazy, and they made the bridge buckle so much that even though it was Velcroed, a lot of the pieces ended up falling apart.
Yeah.
Then they had to repair the bridge, or they couldn't cross it as quickly as before then, because then they had to be really careful stepping over the holes they created. Whereas the teams where the person just kind of like maintained a steadier pace, the bridge stayed together. Yeah. So it was really kind of about strategy and finding a sweet spot.
Yeah. So, like I said, that challenge was like one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was really cool.
It was really, really cool. So at the end of that quest, there are 5 teams left. And then they're going into quest 3. Again, going into quest 3, I don't think they know exactly what they're doing. But then before they are announcing this quest, 5 more people walk in. And they're kind of like, wait, why is there another team? A bunch of people
were eliminated. Yeah.
And so there was a redemption quest. So quest like 2.0. Okay, so these 5 team members walk in and they're like, why are there 5 people? All these people got like eliminated. So basically, challenge or quest 2.5 was basically taking everyone who was eliminated.
So the revival challenge for the eliminated contestants was they took their bus, and above them they had a sandbag that weighed, I think it was 40 pounds.
It was like
40 kilograms.
The whole bust plus the sand weighed 40% of their body.
40% of their body. Yep, that's
yes. So
that's
40%. So there's a rope holding up their bust with sandbags. The total poundage of it is 40% of their body weight.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it was all strung up. So they were all in a big circle, and then all the ropes kind of went up like this, and there was a center area where the bus and the sandbags were weighted. Then at a certain point, they had to just grab the rope and hang on, and the last 5 standing were revived back into the challenge as contestants.
Yeah. So some of the people just immediately couldn't do it. I mean, I don't think I could even weigh. I don't think I could lift like 40 pounds. I don't think. There's like water jugs in my office that weigh probably like 10 pounds. I can't even lift it. So I don't think I could lift 40% of my own body weight.
I mean, it wasn't even lifting. It was just hanging on to a rope.
Yeah, they're
so
just
you
like
needed
holding on
grip
to this
strength
rope.
and
yeah, and so some of the guys were like kind of using like their feet placement and switching like hands and stuff, and that helped. And then the one girl literally just picked a stance and just didn't move the entire time.
Impressive.
Yeah, she just didn't move. And another thing I forgot to mention is that there's like commentary, like, you know how on reality shows they'll have like a little confessional kind of thing, and they give like, oh, today we had to sew this dress. Like, we're watching RuPaul's Drag Race, so that's why. But, you know, like little confessional things. So the girl on the confessional who was just like standing there the entire time and not moving, she basically said it was all about mind strength and mind power, which that is also really important with a lot of these challenges, because if you don't believe that you can do something, like, obviously, like, I can't fly. Like, I believe that I could grow wings, but I can't. But, like, if I tell myself I can lift this water jug, like, at the office, if my mental, like, attitude is not, I can lift this, I'm not gonna be able to do it. Mm-hmm. You can, like, will yourself to do certain things. So that's kind of what she was talking about, is that she just picked a stance, was really stoic about it, and just held on, and she ended up making it to the top 5. But yeah, it was more about like willpower and like mental strength.
Yeah, because there were some bigger guys where it was like, oh, if they just grab it and they lean back, they'll be fine. No. But they just couldn't hang on to it. You could see the rope slipping through their fingers. Mm-hmm. So it was really a mind over matter kind of situation.
And I think that's kind of how the preliminary challenge was as well, with them hanging on to the rope, or hanging on to like the scaffolding too. It was like a lot of mental willpower, and also like how you were physically holding on to the bars, because we didn't talk about that, but the bars, it was really like scaffolding. So some people were like holding on like at their elbows, and some people were holding on more with their arms. So like it's a combination of like actual strength and like willpower. Mm-hmm. But she did really well. So those top 5 people come back, and they form a team of 5. Yep. So now there's 30 people going into the next challenge. And so going into challenge or quest 3, they have to form groups of 10. So there's 5 groups, right? Yeah. So they have to form groups. There were 6 teams of 5. I'm really bad at math. There's 6 teams of 5, and they all go together. So there's 3 teams going into the next challenge. Yep. Because 3
I'm like
3 times 10 is 30. Math is really hard.
Yeah.
That's why I have a podcast, so I don't have to do math. So basically, the teams form like an alliance, and the revival team and like the reject team form a team because no one else wants to work with them, unfortunately. So going into this challenge, I can't remember if they were told what this was before. I think they were told after they picked the teams.
Yeah, they were told, right? But they weren't given any details.
Yeah, so after they pick the teams, they're told what the challenge is. And this was probably the most interesting challenge.
Yeah, it was intense.
Going into this like challenge, I was like, how are they going to do this? Like, I didn't actually think anyone was going to be able to do this. It was insane. So there's 3 groups of 10, as we've just established. And it is called the 1.5 ton boat challenge. So the teams of 10, so the three teams of 10, have to move a 1-ton boat from one end of this like arena. Basically, it looks like it's like
sandy arena.
Yeah, it looks like the boat is like beached, and they have to pull it up onto a dock, quote quote, that's like elevated. And so they have to first they have to dig up 5 or 6 whatever barrels, and the weight of those barrels equals half of a ton. So the boat, once they put all the barrels into the boat weighs 2 tons. And some of these are like really like buried really far into the sand. The ones inside of a box that they have to like hammer open, and they're all like different weights and stuff. So once they put all of and they're oak barrels, so they're like heavy already. And so they have to put all the barrels into the ship.
Yep.
And then they have to move the ship up across the sand to the dock, and they have like wooden logs. So the way that you would do this, like I guess the pirates would do this and stuff, or like Yeah, so the boat has like oars coming out of the side, right?
Like a Viking ship.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a Viking ship, and there's like oars coming out of the side. And basically, what they do is they have to take these giant wooden logs and put them in front of the ship. And some of the teams lifted the ship up with the oars, and some of them just pushed.
Just tried to drag it.
Yeah, tried to drag it because there's like ropes and stuff. So basically, what you do is you put the wooden logs in front of the ship
to roll it.
Yeah, to create like kind of like wheels where you'd put the ship on top of these logs, and as it moves, the logs go back, and then you can take the ones from the back and put it into the front.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to explain it.
That's how they built the Easter Island heads or Stonehenge or whatever.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they had the big, huge megalithic stones, and they think that one of the ways they could have moved them is they put, even like Egyptians with the pyramids, they put, logs and stuff ahead of them and rolled them.
Interesting.
It's like very, for lack of a better term, it's like prehistoric method of moving very heavy things.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like pirates would do that. Anyway, history lesson. We got a math lesson and a history lesson. So basically, they have to move the ship from the one end of like the arena up a dock that's like a wooded dock that's like slanted, and then they have to tie this rope around this like
it's like an iron beam.
The iron beam at the end. They have to like put the rope over the iron beam, and the rope is like on the front of the ship. Mm-hmm. The fact that these groups of 10 people were able to move a 1-ton ship together just with like primitive objects and their strength is like fascinating to me, because like I keep talking about pirates and stuff, but like obviously like back in the day, I mean pirates are still a thing, but like the Jack Sparrow kind of pirates, like those kinds of people like would do stuff like this, like if their ship got beached or whatever. But like you don't think about people today having to do stuff like that, and the fact that like these groups of just 10 people were able to do that. And spoiler alert, the team with like the reject people and the revival quest, they don't end up making it to the next challenge.
But they were very close.
But they were really, really close. And yeah, they were timed. So one of the teams, they were really close. But so there's on-screen text that was in Korean, because the show is in Korean and we were watching with subtitles. Mm-hmm. But one of our friends, we had a group of friends come over one day and we were watching the show. And one of our friends speaks Korean. And the on-screen text was coming up, but the subtitles weren't showing what the on-screen text was saying. Like it wasn't translating. It was like the
scoreboard.
Yeah, like the scoreboard like wasn't being translated into English. So our friend was like, oh, blah, 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 and he was like explaining it, and I was like, wait, like what is it? Because he can speak Korean. But he was basically saying it was like the team leader names and then the time that was taking them and stuff. So there was kind of like a scoreboard that was being shown, but we couldn't, like Netflix's translations were not helping us figure out what was going on.
No, so, it only showed at certain points of the track too. They didn't reveal what their total time was until the very end, to keep the suspense, until the next episode, who won.
Yeah, but the subtitles and the translations with on-screen text and stuff, when there was like Korean words, it was not very good. Which brings me to a point that I was going to do an episode on Squid Game, but I never ended up doing it. One of the big complaints that I had with Squid Game, and it's just a little rant about Netflix's like subtitles and stuff. So Squid Game is in Korean, and we watched English dub. At least I watched English dub. But the translations of what they were saying in Korean were not always accurate to the English dub.
No.
So I don't know if it's just the way that like Korean is not able to be like translated into English very well, or if it's that Netflix's Korean translations are just garbage. Like, I don't know.
Sure.
So, I don't speak Korean. I don't know. So it's one way or the other, but we're just going to blame Netflix for that. So yeah, they did have a scoreboard, but we had no idea what it said. And it popped up, like, really quickly, and our friend, like, couldn't, like, really translate it very well. So there are 2 teams who make it onto the last challenge or the next quest, and unfortunately the reject team and the revival team didn't make it, but they were really close.
Close.
The team that did the best was Sexyama's group.
They were They were in the lead by a couple minutes.
Yeah, so they were in the lead.
They were very, very much in the lead.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but they were in the lead by at least like 3 or 4 minutes. So they did really well. And
they definitely worked the smartest.
Yes. Their team did, I think they were the one that lifted the ship.
Yep.
Yeah, they lifted it with the oars, and then the way that they went about it, like moving up the ramp and stuff, was also just like really like more strategic, I think.
Yeah, there was a lot more, I think, communication and just the way they had, some personnel pulling on the rope at the last minute and pushing the ship and just kind of the team and the team leader, he ultimately designated who should go where and do what at this time. And again, the communication across the team, they were on it from the get-go.
Yeah, I think, so that was a challenge where the communication really came into play, and then putting people in, their strengths. Like, that team also had, I think out of that team of 10, I think there was like 2 women or 3 women. Yeah. And they knew, like, I might not be able to pull something, but the one woman at the end was trying to fit the rope over the beam. Because that was something she could do, and then the other people were helping like move the logs and stuff. So I think their communication was really well done. And that challenge was not just obviously about strength, but it was about communicating and hey, I need help with this, I can't lift this, help me.
Yeah, and working smarter, not harder. They realize they don't have the strength to shove a wooden ship across wooden planks, and so we can mitigate it by lifting it even incrementally. It still got them further on the get-go, farther than all the other teams. Whereas the other team was all the macho men. They were just trying to shove this thing and it wouldn't move until finally by brute force they got it moving. But it took them a long time to get that thing to even budge an inch.
Yeah, and I think the end the 2 other teams were off by like a minute or so.
I think,
yeah, it was like a minute or so.
It was incredible.
And I think the team of like the reject, I hate calling them that because they're not rejects. You're not rejects. You guys are all amazing. That's what they kept calling each other. But the reject team, there was like one point where I think something got like caught or something. So if that didn't happen, I think they probably would have won. So it was just a little mistake.
Yeah, it was right when they were hitting the ship up on the slanted part. They had it like an extra log there that didn't get out of the way or something, and it just like the wood was hitting each other, and they just had a hard time getting it right over. So if that didn't happen, they probably would have won.
Yeah, so it was really just like unfortunate. But they did really, really well. It wasn't like they were off by like 10 minutes or something. Like they were really, really close. So that was definitely like my favorite challenge.
That was really cool.
It was just like, obviously, like, watching people, like, fill up sand and, like, that kind of stuff, like, was, like, there's lots going on. But that's, like, not something that's, not that that's not difficult, but that's, like, sort of a simple challenge. Like, it's a simple concept, which I wanted to talk about as well. Like, a lot of these challenges, like, the concept of what they're doing is very simple. It's just how much strength it takes to do things. So, like, filling up a sandbag and walking up a set of stairs and running across a bridge and putting the sand into a cylinder. Like, that's a very simple thing, but it's not easy to do. But
it's how you go about it.
Yeah, it's how you go about it. But the ship, like, that's not a simple thing.
No, I mean, that took teamwork and again, communication and all that into account. Yeah. So there's a lot going on. It was really cool.
Yeah, like, I know 10 people, and I don't think we could do that. I don't think we could even move the boat like an inch.
We probably couldn't.
And, like, I don't think I could have picked up any of the barrels.
Oh, God.
I don't know how much all of them weighed, but like, all of the barrels combined weighed a half a ton.
Yeah.
I don't think I could just lift an empty oak barrel. So, like, this is just... I'm saying some of these challenges are simple, but they're not, like...
They're not easy
to do. But the ship challenge, that was just, like... If you don't want to watch the whole show, I would watch the ship challenge, because that was, like, really, really cool. So that was just, like, absolutely insane. And Sexyama, his team won.
Yeah.
There's one part where he just, like, took his shirt off.
We're like, yes, finally!
Like, yeah, we were watching that was the episode we were watching with our friends.
Like,
and
it got real!
Yeah, every time a guy would just, like, rip their shirt off, I was like, yeah! Yep.
Anyway. We were disappointed when a lot of the men entered clothed. We're like, come on, guys.
That's gonna
really?
come off. Like, your shirt's gonna come off.
Like, just save yourself the time now.
Yeah, like, you're wasting precious minutes. So, moving into quest number 4, they're being split back into their original teams. So now there is 4 teams of 5 people each. And this is a team delegate challenge. So basically, they're told in advance what their challenges are going to be, and each person on the team gets to pick or bid for which challenge they want to do based on their strengths. Whoever wins each one of these challenges makes it to the top 5. So out of these 20 people, only 5 of them will end up going to the final quest. Yeah. So the first game is called The Punishment of Atlas, and they're all based off of Greek myths and Greek punishments. So if you don't know about Greek mythology, a lot of people or characters, I guess, or people get punishments that they have to do in hell or Hades or whatever. So they're all their punishments or their stories of Greek mythology, which I think is interesting. So the first game, they're called games in this one, is The Punishment of Atlas. And if you know the story of Atlas, Atlas was forced to hold up a giant boulder. So if you've ever seen that, I think there's a production company or something. It's not Paramount. It's one of those production companies. I think the logo is Atlas, holding up the boulder. But that was his punishment, that he had to hold the weight of the world on his shoulder. That's kind of where that term comes in. And unfortunately, one of these people is a woman that was on Sexyama's team, and I think she picked this challenge because the other team members were really good at the other options, and nobody on her team was going to succeed at this, and she was I can't really succeed at any of them, so I'm just going to pick this one. Yeah. That's kind of what I think, because she literally gets out in the first 2 seconds of this challenge.
She couldn't even pick it up all the way over her shoulder, bless her heart.
But the boulder that they're holding up
was massive.
Is 220 pounds. It's a giant boulder that weighs 220 pounds.
Yeah, it was huge.
And it was covered in rope lattice, so that they could hold on to the rope instead of just trying to grip onto the boulder. So they did have a little bit of help, but she couldn't even lift it up, and she drops it very quickly. One of the other guys actually bumps into her. And then that guy,
he was out next.
He was out within maybe a couple minutes. Maybe he held up for 2 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And then there are 2 other guys left. The one guy is this guy who is massive dude. Tall, big, massive. Yeah. He just he probably could have lifted the ship himself.
Probably.
He is huge. He was so buff.
Probably
and then
lift my car.
Other guy, yeah, probably. The other guy was similar build to him, but not as massive. He was more buff, a buff.
Yeah,
dude.
And I would say incredibly strong and buff, but I wouldn't say he wasn't just built like a building this other guy was.
Yeah,
I mean, the other guy was built like a square.
The guy that's really massive, he was if I can just hold this boulder up for 10 minutes, I'll be really proud of myself. Then they cut to the time, and it was 30 minutes, and
we're
wow,
oh
he's holding up for 30 minutes. He beat his 10 minutes. Cool.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to 60 minutes, and I'm okay, good job. 90 minutes, and I'm at this point, I'm how long are these people going to be holding this boulder up?
Yeah, we expected it would be maybe 15,
30 minutes.
Yeah, how long could they really hold these things up for?
The guy who is the buff guy, he drops his boulder. 2 hours. 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours these people are holding up a 225-pound boulder.
And at certain points, they were just holding it up with one arm because you're holding your arms up and the blood's going out of your arms. So they'd fix their stance, hold the boulder up, and then kind of rest their arm, shake it out, and then switch. And we're just
2 hours. And this was the first one that they showed.
Yeah.
Which, honestly...
everybody could watch.
I kind of wish that they would have saved this for, the middle.
It was...
because it was, the first one they showed. So 220-pound boulder, 2 hours. The one guy dropped it. The other guy immediately dropped it, and he won.
Yeah, he was I'm done.
And so that guy moving in was the guy I thought was going to make it. One of the guys I thought was going to make it to the end.
Yep.
And I thought that guy was going to win. Spoiler alert, yeah, he doesn't end up winning. But I thought that guy was gonna be like the winner, so I was like, yay, he made it. So it was insane. It was insane.
Yeah.
And then the other challenges of this were like interesting, but that was like they started with like the peak of this shit. Like the rest of the challenges were like cool, but that one was like, okay, you had my attention.
The others were comparatively over really quickly. I mean, obviously, like a few minutes compared to that one, but like the obstacle course one, it was over like that.
Yeah, so this second one was called the Fire of Prometheus, which is the obstacle course. And basically, they have to run through an obstacle course, and they go through it 3 times, and they have to grab a torch at the end. And so the first time that they go through the obstacle course, there's 3 torches. The last person obviously gets eliminated. Then the next round, there's 3 people, there's 2 torches, and then moving on. So that one was over in like 10, 15 minutes real time.
Yeah.
And that one was more, and so each of these challenges, they knew going into it, like, obviously the punishment of Atlas, that was strength. This one was speed. Mm-hmm. Some of the other ones are, like, endurance and stuff like that. One was, like, climbing and stuff we'll get to. So this one was over very quickly. And we never mentioned this already, but there were 3 non-Korean contestants.
Oh, yeah.
There were 2 white guys. The one white guy, I think, got out in the one-on-one challenge.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 guys made it to this round. So both non-Korean contestants that made it through were in this one. They don't win, but they did really, really well. Miracle, right? Yep. That's what his name was. He was like...
He was in the last 2.
He was in the last 2, so he almost made it in. But still, like, really impressive and stuff. So those guys were, like, the tall guy was... I think he was, like, in the military or something, and he moved over there. And then Miracle is like a dancer and stuff, so like maybe he was born there, maybe he moved there. I'm not sure, but
they both like, lived there and were established.
Yeah, so Korean citizens and stuff, but yeah, so that one was like really crazy. And the guy who won that one was like crazy fast. And then the game 3 was called the Wings of Icarus, and I think everyone knows like. Icarus, fly too close to the sun, you get burned. That's like the story. He flew too close to the sun and his wings burned and he fell to the ground. So this one, they were forced to climb a rope over and over again. So basically this rope is like, it's a really long rope and it keeps dropping down from the ceiling. And they have to continuously like climb up this rope, and whoever lasts the longest wins. And the person who won this was actually a mountain rescuer.
Yeah.
He was so adorable.
He was really cool.
He was like a mountain climber and a mountain rescuer.
Yeah.
And he was like so adorable. I was hoping he was gonna win because he was really
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, he made it. No, he gets out. We'll get there. But yeah, he was a mountain climber. And he was like, he was adorable.
And he was another case too, where just knowing the technique of how to do that, he had the advantage because some of them were just kind of like. Hanging on to it, like I would. It's like, I've never climbed a rope. I'm just going to hang on for dear life. He knew how to, like step on the rope by wrapping it kind of around his foot in a way. Yeah,
so the way you climb the ropes and hold on is you basically wrap the rope around one of your feet, and then you kind of, like, hold on.
Step off of it.
You put one of your feet on top of the other one with the rope, like, in between, and that's, like, how you, like, can pull yourself up. So his technique was, like, he could have stayed up there, like...
Yeah.
Oh, he could have stayed up there like forever.
Yeah.
So he makes it. He wins. And then the next one is the tale of
Ouroboros.
I don't speak Greek, but these contestants had to chase each other around an arena and tag someone, and then they'd get out. So basically, it's like this big track. And they're all scattered as they start out, and everyone's running around the track doing laps. And you have to tag the person in front of you or not get tagged by the person behind you.
So you're chasing and you're being chased.
Yeah, you're chasing and you're being chased. And then the last person on the track wins. And the one guy gave up kind of, not quickly. He was like, injury. He was injured. So he kind of gave up. And then the last person was like kind of at a disadvantage because the one person would have had to have run all the way really quickly to tag the other person. So at that point, it was kind of like the person who was like in front kind of had the disadvantage.
Yeah.
Which was kind of unfortunate. Weird, but that challenge was interesting, and that one probably lasted like a while as well.
Yeah, I think it was a little under half an hour, I think.
Yeah, I think it lasted about like a half an hour or something. Yeah. And then this one was also one of my favorite. This was where Sexy Yama lost.
I know.
Which was really sad. This is the punishment of Sisyphus. And Sisyphus, the story is he had to push a boulder up a mountain, and then when he gets to the top of the mountain, it just rolls back down to the other side of the mountain, and then he has to go back to the other side of the mountain and push it back up and go back over, basically pushing a boulder up and down a hill forever.
Forever, yeah.
Which sucks. So that's basically what they had to do. They had to push these same boulders. They were the same 220-pound boulders up a little obstacle course to make it to the top, and then they have to push it back down. And as they started, they had like 15 seconds or something to do that. And as the competition went on, as the rounds went on, that number of seconds dwindled down. And so Sexy Alma was the second person to get home on this, and it was really sad. He didn't make it, but he did take his shirt off. So,
he did, yeah.
Yeah, he did take his shirt off, so he gave us a little treat before he quote unquote.
They were also supportive of each other. I mean,
they were,
rather than being like, oh, old man, you can't make it. They were like, come on, man, just push it up one more time. And even he and the others who got out earlier, for the final last two guys, I mean, everybody was right there cheering him on. It wasn't like, oh, kick his butt, beat him. It was like, you can just push it one more time, man, breathe and stuff like that. Just seeing them root for each other, even though they were competitors, was really heartwarming. I feel
like the Korean culture, people have a lot more respect for each other.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot when we were watching it. Yeah. If this was in the U.S., it'd be like, beep, beep, you, man.
Yeah, people would not be as nice to each other.
Yelling at each other and mean and swearing.
Yeah, but yeah, like, if this was an American show, the people would just not be as nice to each other. But yeah, they were so supportive of each other. And even when someone, got out, they would be like, great job, you still did a good job. Like, you should be proud of yourself and stuff. And when the people were eliminated, a lot of them were like, oh, I didn't do good. I they were so hard on themselves.
They were.
Like when the mountain climber guy got out, he was like, oh, I guess I'm just not good enough. I'm gonna have to train harder. And I'm like, you did so well. Like, you did so good. But they were just so hard on themselves. So I feel like there's a lot more humility with their culture that America just doesn't have.
Even with Sexy Yama, we were rooting for him, and even when he was doing amazing at challenges, he's like, I'm just doing the best I can, thank you. And he was so humble, and
he's like, I'm so amazing. Grateful to be here with all of these competitors. And he's
like, everyone's amazing, everyone's doing such a great job. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah,
it was really good to see.
Yeah, it was really sweet. So that was the punishment challenges. And then we move on to the final. So before they went into the final, and I'm assuming they filmed these days apart, because obviously you're not going to make someone hold a 220-pound boulder up for 2 hours and then immediately make them compete. So they had time in between. But the top 5 people get to have this feast, and it really had Squid Game vibes. When if you've
meal.
Yeah, if you've seen Squid Game, before they go into the final challenge, they give them a meal, and it's in this room. It's lobster and all this crazy shit. That's
fancy, lavish.
That's gourmet. Literally what this was. They gave them this meal and stuff.
Steak and lobster and fruit.
And they're all just talking about oh, I got into bodybuilding when I was 10 or whatever. They're all talking to each other, and they're all just nice. To each other.
Again, it wasn't I'm gonna kick your beat tomorrow or something like that. It was why are you here? Are you here representing your family or your sport or things like that? What do you want to get out of this challenge? What do you want people to see from this challenge? And again, it was just so respectful, and it's it was really
would not be a thing if it was. No. Not that everyone in America is cranky, but if you've seen reality shows, people are not friendly.
And again, just basing it off of similar things, similar Western content, physical challenges like Ninja Warrior, and God forbid, don't get me started on professional sports. We see the stuff different teams level at each other. Just imagine that kind of language in this scenario. Would be vile.
Everyone's just so supportive of each other.
Yeah.
So quest 5, the final quest. They have to compete in 4 different games. And so, with one contestant being eliminated. And so the first game, the mountain climber, he gets eliminated. But so for the first game, they're all facing back to back, and they're all on like ropes that are all tied together in the middle. So it's basically like a 5-way tug of war, but everyone's facing outward.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a key in front of them on like a pedestal. And you basically have to use your strength to pull all the other contestants your way, grab the key off the pedestal, and unhook yourself from the group. And unfortunately, the mountain climber, he was not as like built. Like he was very fit, like fit as hell. But like compared to the other contestants, he wasn't as like bulky.
Yeah.
So he was kind of just being dragged along, and he was very close with another contestant to unlock their key.
Within seconds.
Yeah.
Because even some of the prior competitors, they could watch them, from another room on the
Yeah.
screen. Some of them even thought that he won
I
because
thought he
they
won.
were so close. So it wasn't only, it took strength to get to the key first and foremost, but then it took dexterity to like flip on your back, get the lock in front of you, unhook it. Mm-hmm. And that's where the other guy almost lost because he
fumbled.
He was
the
like
key.
kind of like messing around, and where's the mountain climber? He got it unhooked right away.
He was really quickly behind the other guy to unlock the key. But I think if he made, I really do think that if he won that, or if he didn't get eliminated on that, I think he could have won the whole thing. Because the other challenges were more about like speed and like endurance and stuff, and I think he probably would have made it like really far if not won.
Yeah, that's where right off the bat he was just at a disadvantage because it was
Because of the
him
challenge.
versus the massive guy who held a boulder over his head for 2 freaking hours.
Who like basically pulled everyone towards him, but he was the second person to unlock the key.
Yeah,
though.
because again he didn't have the dexterity. He kind of fumbled with the lock too,
Yeah.
but it's still at least like the first half of that challenge relied more so on weight than the second half relied on the dexterity with the lock.
Yeah.
Whereas unfortunately our mountain climber guy, he lacked the sheer body weight and strength to pull everyone his way right off the bat.
Yeah. So unfortunately he was eliminated.
I mean, he was still top 5 out of the
top
top
5
100
out of
people.
100. And then when he got eliminated, he's like, I need to try harder. I'm like, no, you don't need to try any harder. Like you, anyway.
Yes.
Anyway. So, the second game was the square flip challenge. So, there were 66 wooden, like, squares that you had to flip over, and one side was black, one side was white, and, the remaining 4 contestants were paired up, and one team had the black squares, and one team had the white squares, and whatever team had more of their color of the squares facing upwards would win. And so you're thinking, like, that's not difficult. However, the boards were pretty large. They looked like they were pretty heavy.
Dense.
And they
material.
were, like, dense wood. And you had to flip them over. And you're also trying to go around flipping them over to, like, face your color. But you're also trying to, like, de-flip the ones that your contestants are flipping. And then you're trying to, like, bend down and stuff. So the really massive guy,
You're hunched over the whole time.
Yeah, so you're hunched over. So he was like doing really poorly, and his team lost, and so he had to go head to head with his teammate.
Yep.
And he ends up losing that one, basically because of how much he had to bend over and how like
You had to be nimble and quick.
Yeah, he wasn't as quick as the other guy and not as like nimble and stuff. So he wasn't able to like really keep up.
No.
So at the end, he only flipped 18, and the other guy flipped 48. Just because he was like really running out of breath and stuff. So, but it's interesting because he can hold a boulder over his head for 2 hours because that's strength. That's just like brute strength, and the way his body is built and the way that he like
solid.
He's just solid muscle, so he can just stand and hold something. But when it comes to something that's a little bit more like moving around and being quick, he's not as good. But on the other hand, the guy who beat him couldn't hold a boulder over his head for probably 10 minutes. So it's interesting that like the kinds of challenges that they had to do, and just because he got out on like something that was like maybe a quote unquote easier challenge doesn't make him not impressive. And like I honestly think him holding the boulder over his head for 2 hours, like that was like more impressive than flipping a board.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that more often. It's like 2 freaking hours.
Every now and then I'm just like, do you remember that guy who was flipping that bowl over his head for like 2 hours? So now there are 3 contestants left, and this one is a shuttle run competition.
Yeah, so this one, it was, if anybody remembers the pacer test from high school, it was set on a triangular track, so everybody was at a point. Mm-hmm. Then there was a bell or a button.
Little bell.
Yeah, at the end of their side of the triangle, they had to run to the side, hit it, then run all the way back and hit back at the starting point. And they only had so many seconds to do this.
Yeah, they had like 15 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, and then that number would go down, every lap or every couple of laps. So then they had to start running quicker and quicker.
So now they have 10 seconds, and then after a couple of laps they had 8 seconds and stuff like that. So it was really, that was more about endurance.
Yeah.
It was about endurance.
And also a little dexterity as well, kind of going back to the lock thing, where you had to make sure you hit the button and it dinged, because if it didn't, then you had to...
Yeah, because the one guy missed it, and then he had to go back and kind of mess up his rhythm and stuff.
Yeah.
So that one was, I was just like, I think I could do that for maybe a minute before I'd give up.
Yeah.
And then moving on to the last challenge. This one was crazy. So basically, they had to, it was like a giant spool. So you know how like those cable spools that you see, they're like wooden and like cables are like wrapped around them. They use them for like construction stuff. The spool, it was a giant spool with rope wrapped around it. And basically, I don't remember how many feet of rope it was. It was called like the infinite rope pulling, is what they called it.
Sure,
so
it felt infinite to these guys.
Yeah, they're facing each other with their rope across to them, and they had to basically pull this infinite rope off this spoolie, and whoever like finished their rope, and then went over to like this area and clicked like a bell would win. And they were really head to head.
They were
for a while.
Yeah, in fact, it was the bicyclist and the CrossFit snowboarder guy
that were the last 2.
Yeah, and initially we thought the bicyclist was going to win because he had
endurance and...
Yeah, he had such a quick head start, and he wasn't really struggling. At least he didn't seem like it.
No.
Until later on, whereas the CrossFit guy kind of, not off the bat, but he didn't start quite as quick, and then he was kind of like...
pacing himself more.
Yeah, but he wasn't going as quick, and he was like, oh my god, this is freaking heavy. Kind of a lot quicker than the bicyclist did. And so we thought, oh my gosh, the bicyclist has such a head start on this guy. How is he going to catch up?
But the bicyclist kind of stopped every now and then and kind of like readjusted himself, but the CrossFitter was just going. He wasn't stopping at all.
Wouldn't stop.
So I think he caught up to the bicyclist.
Yeah, then they were pretty neck and neck for a while.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until almost the very freaking end, like the last couple layers of rope, the bicyclist guy, he stopped and, was resting his arms, which, God love him, he's like, my arms just wouldn't work. Yeah.
And the other guy's like, no, keep going, keep going, and he was just pulling it.
He would not, and he wasn't going very fast, but he wasn't stopping.
It was just like a good pace. And it's about strength and pace and stuff. So the CrossFit snowboard athlete, Woo Jin Young, he ended up winning, becoming the top person, the physical 100 winner. Yeah. And for this challenge, he got to smash the other guy's bus instead of his own. So kind of like showcasing, I beat you. So there's a little bit of background on him. I just want to say congratulations and shout him out. So he was born in South Korea. He actually has a master's degree in physical education. He worked as a PE teacher and served as a Marine in Korea. And then he was studying English in Canada, so he went to Canada to study English. He became really enthusiastic about snowboarding. He pursued it as a career. He was the first to officially represent South Korea as a national snowboarding athlete at the International Federation of Freestyle Ski Cross World Cup. It's a very long title. And then he served as a coach for South Korea's national snowboarding team, and then he went on to win... I almost said Squid Game. He went on to win Physical 100. So yeah, he's CrossFitter in snowboarding. And when I think about that, someone who does CrossFit it's a like
That's
a variety of different things.
Yeah.
I went to one CrossFit.
It's very
competition.
well rounded.
Yeah, you're very well rounded. I didn't compete. I watched a CrossFit competition when I was in college. And I was like, I don't think I can't even do a pull up. I'm not athletic at all.
I don't think I can either.
But yeah, it makes sense. Somebody who does CrossFit would win. But it was just interesting to see like the top 5 people were a mix of a mountain climber, someone who does CrossFit, bicyclist, like I think that guy did like bodybuilding or MMA and stuff like that. So a really interesting variety of people, variety of sports. Just goes to show that like different types of bodies, and although they were like, my body wasn't as good, but all these people like did so well in all of these challenges. And even if you lost like in like the one-on-one death match in the beginning, like you were of 100 people in Korea to be picked for this. Like that is just impressive. I think it's very impressive. And I have heard that there's potential for a second season, which I'm very excited about. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this show. I thought it was really interesting. Again, I'm not really into like sports. I used to watch like American Ninja Warrior with like my mom, and I've watched Wipeout, which is like, I feel like Wipeout is kind of like the American version of this show because it's like ridiculous. I'm not really into like sports and stuff, but this was more about like how does the human body like do these kinds of challenges, and how certain bodies can do things. And I think it's interesting because the guy who won, the CrossFitter, like he was toned, but like his bust, when you looked at it, it wasn't like 6-pack, washboard abs, giant arms. Like it was like he was toned, he had abs, but they weren't like super defined, and like he didn't have like he was toned and like muscular, but not like buff. Like he wasn't like a buff bodybuilder kind of guy.
No, he was very unassuming.
Yes.
Whereas if I, saw him on the street or at the store or something,
like,
I'd be like, okay, it's like looks like an average guy. He probably goes to the gym every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't, walking.
Like
he didn't have
showy
deltoids, like up to his ears or anything crazy like that. And even his bust, like you said, he didn't have like, he wasn't ripped. Some of the guys who went in there, I mean, you could see every ab,
like
every
Rock.
detail,
like
every vein.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were ripped and shredded.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're... Not to say these people are not as good as one other person. I kind of think some of these were based on the challenges. Like,
yeah,
depending on what the challenge was, you might have been better or worse at it. But
yeah,
I think the point is it doesn't really matter what your body physically looks like. It matters, how you train, and how you can train your body to have endurance, how you can be mentally prepared for things, and just being fit in general, not necessarily like looking like the Hulk. Because the guy who held the boulder up, like he had like a big belly, he was like bigger, giant dude, but like did not have a 6-pack. Like if I saw him like walking around, I would be like, oh, he's just like a big dude. He doesn't like really look like someone who could lift a boulder.
Yeah, there weren't like obvious, again, like
pecs and stuff.
Like again, obvious shredded, ripped muscles.
Yeah. So it just because you have like, just because you look like the Hulk doesn't necessarily mean that you're like as fit. But not mean that you're not fit, but because all these people are. But
oh my god!
I think it's interesting the type of body the person who won, and the fact that they did CrossFit, they were well rounded. I think that
really comes into it too.
Yeah, he was a well-rounded athlete, and that makes sense. And then just looking at the top people who made it in, the different skill sets that they had and stuff. So overall, really interesting show. I highly recommend you watch it. It's on Netflix. I know a lot of people are like getting rid of Netflix and stuff, but it's really good. Before you get rid of Netflix, watch Physical 100. There potentially will be a second season. And the whole concept of it, they said it's a study to find the world's perfect body, which I don't know if I really agree with that, but it's just an interesting study in like the human body and what the human body can do. Because 10 people can lift a 2-ton ship with just willpower and like strength.
Yeah.
Which I think is very interesting. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about Physical 100. Thank you so much to Malik for being my co-host.
Thanks for having me.
We have so many amazing things to chat about in season 4, and please stick around. If you enjoyed the episode, you can find us on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. That's it for this episode. Stay safe, stay classy, and we'll chat again with you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.